Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 42nd episode of Don't Forget the Popcorn. Today, we're reviewing Across the Spider-Verse. We got the next installment from the animated Miles Morales Spider-Man series, and I must say, I did enjoy this film, but we gotta break it down and talk about it, all right? So we just gonna jump right into it. So Across the Spider-Verse, you gotta if you haven't seen Into the Spider Verse is awesome. Into the Spider Verse was easily one of the best animated movies to come out in the last 10 years, without doubt. I personally think it's the best Spider Man movie, or I don't know, maybe it could be this one. But I was highly, highly impressed with Into the Spider Verse. The animation, the story, it was fun. I love Spider Man. Spider Man is one of my favorite heroes. So I was very excited when I saw it. It's a straight banger. And when obviously they're going to release a sequel, I was super excited, but I also was scared because I was like, how do you live up? How do you live up to such high standards that Into the Spider Verse set? I just felt like there was no way it could top the first one. Well, I'm here to tell you that this movie was awesome. First of all, so you got Miles Morales now. He is now 15 years old. He's hit a crazy growth spurt. He got really tall. He's really honed in with his spider powers, his invisibility, his electricity, everything that he was lacking in the first one. He has stepped up his game. He has been practicing and working hard. But of course, he's an angsty teen now. And he's going through a lot of stuff that teenagers go through. He's having there's so many themes. This film is quite thematically rich for a superhero film. And you got the theme of course, it is a coming of age story of sorts because you got the theme of this kid growing up right before our eyes. He's having issues with his parents. He's having issues with himself, his identity, hiding who he is from the world, and it's starting to affect him. He's becoming undone because of it. He's an outcast. He doesn't have any friends. People don't understand him. And I think this film ties into what a lot of young teenagers go through, especially now in this social media driven world that we live in this world where everything happens so quickly and everybody's trying to be the best and just one up. And it's always about the next thing. No one can just sit still and just enjoy what's in front of them. And I think this movie covers a lot of those topics very well. It covers young love, young teen love, discovering love at an early age, which is one of the most magical things that can happen in one's life. When you're a young kid, in your early mid teens, and you discover that first love and you get those first feelings, as we see Miles clearly has been thinking about Gwen the entire time since they've been apart. Miles has been lonely. Miles has been feeling like no one understands him, and everyone who does understand him has kind of abandoned him. They've left him. They haven't come to see him. They haven't spoken with him. And he's feeling that. And if you've seen the first one, we had great characters, okay? And this one doesn't lack as well. We got some great characters in this film. Out of all the new addition characters, my personal favorite was the Spider Punk, voiced by Dan Kalula, and he was great. I loved his arc. He was funny. The animation around him was awesome. This film, I will say this. Let's talk about the animation real quick. The animation in this film is it's insane. It's insane. And one thing that I love about them going the animated route with this series with Miles Morales is when you have an animated film, the rules aren't the same. You can break rules in animation. Things don't have to make sense like they have to in live action. Physics don't have to make sense. None of that. And that's the beauty of animation. And you get lost in this art form. This is another moving comic book, just like the first one was. It's gorgeous. Oh, the animators really don't get enough credit for what they do. And these guys who worked on this movie, they get a 10 out of 10. They get an A plus. The animation of this movie is gorgeous. The fight and action sequences are awesome. It's a beautifully shot film, and it just It's gorgeous. There's so many parts. I was really just in awe of what was in front of my eyes on the screen. The animation is great, but guys, if you are a fan of animated films and you haven't seen either of these, please do yourself a favor and watch Into the Spider-Verse. It's almost like nothing you've seen from an animated comic book film. Now, we know they've made moving comic books like with the Watchmen and stuff, which is cool, but that really plays more like a paper comic book. Where this film feels like a comic book you just walked into. It's something that you just have to experience for yourself in order to, understand what I'm talking about here. But guys, so we are introduced to a new villain, and technically there's like two new villains. But I won't spoil this. There will be no spoilers. I won't tell you what happened. But we got a villain named Spot, and he's voiced by Jason Schwartzman. And if you guys don't know who Jason Schwartzman is, he's been around a long time, done a lot of stuff with Wes Anderson. He was perfect. He was hilarious. Spot was funny. One thing I liked about this is the villains, they were serious enough, but they were still playful enough for everybody to have fun with them. And I think Spot was a great example of a fun villain. He had a lot of silly little one-liners that were funny. He was goofy, and just the way the way they animated him was just great. And it's cool how you see him get stronger as he goes through what he's going through. And then you got Miguel. And I know if you've talked to people who've seen this film, you probably heard about Miguel. Everyone seems to love Miguel. A lot of people had issues saying Miguel wasn't in the movie enough. He was voiced by Oscar Isaacs. Miguel was a very good addition. I enjoyed him, but I didn't enjoy him as much as everyone else did. Maybe because he made me mad. And I will say this, guys, real quick. When I was in the theaters watching this, I had a little experience where there was a kid. Well, he was probably 16 or 17, but he kept walking around the theater. And when I mean walking around, he kept walking in a perimeter in a square. And this man walked in front of me, in front of this screen, about 8 times. On the 9th time, I jumped out, and I kind of freaked out on this kid because he was taking me out the film, laughing with his friends, and walking by was just driving me crazy. So I was a little frustrated watching this movie at a certain point, but it has nothing to do with the film. But so when Miguel was introduced, all this was going on, and it was just, I don't know. I feel like it kind of just took me out of that moment and that character. But I mean, my Lord, Miguel was ruthless. Miguel was this. When you see him introduced, he's badass. He looks cool. I know, I get why everyone likes him. But I liked a lot of other characters more in the film. We get Gwen has a much deeper arc, and her arc is okay. I didn't love it. I'm gonna be honest. I didn't think her arc was great. It didn't compel me very much. I thought it was decent, and but it was very similar. It's very similar to Miles's arc, but obviously it's a little bit worse because Miles has both of his loving parents. But Gwen, she's got a much deeper role in this movie, and she is a very big part of this film. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. Gwen was good. All the returning players were good, of course. Peter was great. He was hilarious. He's a father now. I'm just gonna tell you that he's a father now, and that there's some great jokes going in that, and his daughter's really cool. Like I said, the Spider-Punk was my guy. I thought he was great. He reminded me a lot of myself, just a crazy old school punk rock fan, stuff like that. You had some nice characters introduced. I'm not even gonna tell you guys. You gotta see it for all the little Easter eggs and fun stuff in it. I'm not even gonna spoil any of that for you. But you do have some nice characters, and some of the new Spider-Man that you see all through this verse are funny. You got like T-Rex Spider-Man, and you got like Western Spider-Man who rides a horse, and like there's so many different kinds, and it's really cool and funny. And the writing for this was worked out well. One thing I want to talk about with this film is verse jumping. Verse jumping has just been a cop out in these hero films for the last few years, and I am so sick of it. I didn't care about Ant-Man, terrible. Doctor Strange, no one cares. All this multiverse verse jumping. The only live action film I think that really got verse jumping, and I won't even say they got it 100% right, would be probably Everything Everywhere All at Once, which they did a pretty good job with it, but there was still some elements of it that I didn't like how they portrayed the verse jumping. And I think it was, although yes, the film is kind of about verse jumping, I think it was too relied on, and I think we could have honed in more on the characters a little bit in that film. But it still, I think, is the best example of a live action use of it. This movie and the first one, because it's animated, the verse jumping just works so much better. It just seems to flow better and it makes a little bit more sense. And I think more people can get on board with the verse jumping and these animated features because like I said earlier, animation has no rules. You can do whatever in an animated film and it can make sense and it just feels better. And I have to say this film has done verse jumping very well. It's not too heavily relied upon. Of course, it's there in the background and looming over our heads, but this film is really about Miles growing as a person, learning about himself, learning about the people around him, learning who he can and can't trust, and learning what his true destiny is, and learning out about a lot of truths about himself. And I felt like a lot of these other hero movies that have used verse jumping have solely relied on that to carry their film and not relied on the characters themselves. And that's where this movie excels over these other superhero movies. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I was a big MCU fan some years ago. Big. I would be day one, Thursday at midnight, watching all the new Marvel MCU movies. I'm sorry, guys. I have not been wowed by an MCU movie in a few years. And I'm talking Disney's MCU, okay? I'm not talking just Marvel, because obviously Into the Spider-Verse is great, the first one of this. And I did like No Way Home. I thought it was good, but I didn't think it was as good as everyone else did. I thought it was a touch overrated. It was a good film, but everyone was just acting like it was one of the best movies ever made, and I'm sorry, it's just not. But it was good. I will take this Spider-Man and Into the Spider-Verse over any live-action Spider-Man, and that includes Spider-Man 1 and 2 with Tobey Maguire. And we all know Spider-Man 2 is a great film. That's one of the best Spider-Man movies, but I would take both of these over that. So, with this verse jumping, though, they make it work very well, and it makes sense, and it's easy to follow. And they use the verse jumping as a very nice board to carry these characters through and to get to the final moments of the film that is gonna leave you like, what? Forewarning, let me tell everybody who doesn't know this, because a lot of people went into this not knowing this. This is a part one of two, guys. So when it ends on a kind of very cliffhangery ending, don't be surprised by that, okay? You're going to have to get your butt up and go see Across Spider-Verse 2, which is going to be good. So I dug that. In comparison to the first film, it's really hard for me to say which one I liked more. I do think as it stands, just because I've seen it more and I've gotten to analyze it a bit better, I'm going to say I like Into the Spider-Verse just a little bit more. I like seeing Miles become Spider-Man, and I love that about the first one. It's funny, it's cool, it's really a cool, just, urban twist on Spider-Man, which is freaking awesome. And I like this side of Spider-Man because it gives, a lot of other people who aren't like your traditional Peter Parker, it gives some more alternative and different types of people a character they can more relate to. And Miles Morales is that. Miles Morales is awesome. Shameik Moore, I love him, and I love his voice acting for this. I think, honestly, all the voice acting is good in this, all right? There's no one in this movie is going to bother you with their voice acting. You're probably going to love them and wonder who's voicing some of these people. But I got to say, it is up there, though, with the first one. And it's almost like, it kind of reminds me of Empire Strikes Back. If, Into the Spider-Verse has a very New Hope feel. And then, Across the Spider-Verse has a very Empire Strikes Back feel. And so I'm wondering if, I wonder if we're going to be able to compare Across the Spider-Verse 2 to maybe like a Return of the Jedi or something like that. Because with each film, Miles can be compared to Luke. He really can in the way that he progresses his arc. The first one, he's relying on his friends and the people around him to help him through. In this movie, he's riding solo dolo and he has to figure out who he is by himself. kind of like Luke did in Empire Strikes Back. So I'm wondering if by the third one, he's just going to be a straight slayer going crazy. This film, it was, now that I've sat on it for a couple of days, I gotta say, this is definitely going to be a contender for best films of the year. Um, I think this is so far my favorite release of this year. And, we still got a lot of big boys coming out that, but as it stands right now, there was nothing that I saw this year that I was really like, "Oh, that's the one." But this is a great movie. As far as criticisms go, I do have some issues. And one of my issues is I just didn't love Gwen's arc. And when the focus was on Gwen, I found myself far less interested than when it was focused on Miles. And it has nothing against Gwen. She's a good character. I do like her character. She's fine. It's just I didn't find her as compelling. Miles' story is much more compelling to me and much more entertaining. And they do spend a decent amount of time dealing with Gwen. Not a ton, but it is a decent amount of time where you are seeing Gwen on the screen and not Miles. But it's not a huge deal. Honestly, outside of that, I mean, there's some things that could have been tightened up. I think some of the jokes were a little, and some of them were kind of there, but most of the jokes were pretty good and funny, and they fit the situations very well. But there was definitely some jokes that felt a little bit forced. Um, One criticism I have, and this isn't really, this is just me being a fanboy and wanting what I want as a fan. One of my favorite Spider-Man from this series is Noir Spider-Man, voiced by Nicolas Cage. And I loved him in the first movie. He was one of my favorites by far. And you don't get him in this one, but you may get him in the third one, which is looking like you will. So that'll be cool. I did like the set of characters, the set of Spider-Man from the first one as a whole, better than the set of Spider-Man from this second one. I definitely enjoyed them more. And one thing I liked more about the first one is I like seeing Peter, or sorry, not Pete. Well, Peter and Miles. I like seeing Peter and Miles hanging out, going through, Peter being his mentor. And I just love that. I love that dynamic. I love that kind of stuff in films when you get to see someone grow and you get to see someone change before your eyes. And I really enjoy that aspect of the first one. So for me, that was one thing that was kind of lacking. Like Miles in this movie, I'm just going to tell you, Miles is a solo dolo, man. He is like, it's all on him. Everything and he says, he's like, I'm not the same. I'm the man now. No one understands me, but no one rules me. I answer to me. And I do love that aspect of it. I love that. The independence, the breaking out of his shell. I absolutely love that. I think it's great and it's necessary for this. It's just for me personally, in comparison to the first film, I love that aspect of it. And I thought it was a very strong moment in the first movie that, we didn't have in this film. And another thing is man, it's just like, and this isn't even a criticism of the film. It's just more criticism of the story. This movie made me sad a lot, man. I don't know. It reminded me of my own childhood and times when you reflect on things and look back. And, I was just like, man, this kind of sucks. I felt for Miles a lot in this movie, but obviously this isn't criticisms that are taken away from the film. As far as filmmaking techniques, the soundtrack is good, the score is good. Actually, I'll say the soundtrack in the first one was a little bit better, but I do like the score. The score in this one was awesome. I mean, like I said, the animation is 100 top notch, man. It's A1. It paces really well. Honestly, man, the film has the scores it has for a reason. Currently sitting at a 9 on IMDb, 96 on Rotten Tomatoes. Like, it's currently sitting on great scores, and it's for a reason. I don't have many criticisms of this film. The future of Spider-Man, Miles Morales' Spider-Man, is looking very, very bright. And if they can just nail the part two, like they nailed this one, bro, they had one of the best trilogies of all time. Of all time. Because Into and Across are just, honestly, I know I've only seen this movie once, and I know it's only been out a few weeks, But this maybe is an instant classic, guys. It might be, okay? It might be. And maybe that's just the fanboy side of Spider-Man in me, but I just thoroughly enjoyed this movie, and I just really love living in this world with Miles, and this movie makes you wanna create art. Even if you're not an artist, it makes you wanna make some art. I can't draw for shit, but this makes me wanna pick up a pencil and draw something. It's beautiful. So the future of Spider-Man is looking bright. I really think that I think superhero movies need to pivot to this. I think they need to pivot to more high budget animated films. This movie is making crazy money. This Sony is giving DC and the MCU a blueprint, and they're telling you exactly what you need to do. And I think more people need to start making films geared towards this way. So, having said all that, overall, guys, I'm going to give Spider Man Into the Spider Verse a soft 9 out of 10. Guys, thank you so much for checking out my Spider Man review. Make sure you let me know what you thought about this movie in the comments below, guys. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Guys, if you made it through this, do me a huge solid like and subscribe. I will review whatever you want. I will do it for fun. I don't care about making money, guys. This is fun for me. So, if you want to go ahead and request me to review a movie or whatever, man, just let me know and I'll gladly do it for you. Guys, I appreciate your time. I will be back next week, and don't forget the popcorn.